Good afternoon. President Bettison Varga, trustees, faculty, parents, friends, and graduating seniors. It is such an extraordinary honor for me to be on this podium today looking out at Elm Tree Lawn and 200 smart, dynamic, confident young women, the Scripps class of 2013. You're allowed to do that. First and foremost, I want to commend you on the decision that you made 4 years ago to come to this very special place and become the Scripps class of 2013. And parents, I'm going to repeat what's been said before, but it can't be said often enough. I applaud you for your decision in supporting these students both emotionally and financially. Trust me, you have made a very good investment. As I look back on my own education and business career, I know that coming to Scripps College was the most important decision I made. And it was by no means obvious to me that this would be possible. My father died when I was a child, and my immigrant mother struggled to find work and to raise my brother and me. I held after-school jobs from the time I was 12, so I knew there were no funds for college. Luckily, I have a brilliant older brother whom I idolized. And he had won a big scholarship to Caltech. And that inspired me to at least try for my dream of a college education. When I opened the envelope and learned that I had been accepted here and awarded the largest scholarship that Scripps had ever offered, I felt like Cinderella trying on the glass slipper. You may be surprised to learn that when I arrived on this campus as a freshman, I was overcome with fear that I couldn't make the grade, either academically or socially. Everyone else seemed so smart and so sophisticated, and they all had attended great prep schools and really good public schools. I had graduated from a public high school in East LA, where only a handful of our graduating class went on to college. How could I possibly hold my own? And if that weren't enough to undermine my confidence, it seemed that everyone had such fabulous clothes. You may not relate to this, but in those days, I had never seen so many cashmere sweaters. And I didn't have a one. I realized then, and many times since, that fear could paralyze me, or it could propel me forward. I decided that I should try to meet with the professor who oversaw our humanities program. Dr. Robert Palmer was the most imposing, awe-inspiring academic that any of us had ever encountered. He quoted Homer and Aristotle regularly. I went to see him, and I swallowed hard. I can still remember it. I told him I was having trouble weaving together all the threads of our humanities lectures, and I thought I needed help. Honestly, I expected him to order me out of his office and tell me, "Ruth, you do not belong at Scripps." I was shaking in my proverbial boots. Thankfully, he did not say that. He suggested instead that I get a group of 4 or 5 of my freshman friends together, and we could meet once a week in his office to review the week's lectures and readings. And so we did. Every Tuesday at 4 o'clock, my Browning Hall friends and I would go to Dr. Palmer's office and sit at the feet of the master, soaking up his brilliance and his insights. Clearly, if I hadn't been so afraid of failing, and if I hadn't pushed through that fear somehow to ask for help, I never would have learned what I did. My friend Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook, describes a large poster there that reads, "What would you do if you weren't afraid?" I would rephrase that question just a bit and ask, what would you do? What would we all do if we acknowledged our fear, embraced it, deciphered it somehow, and then cast it away, moving beyond it? My high school my high school didn't teach French, and I was determined to learn it. So at Scripps, I studied comparative literature and French, and I dreamed of winning a graduate grant to study in France. I had become so enamored of French theater and French playwrights. At the beginning of my senior year, I learned about the Fulbright program and went to see Dr. Palmer, same Dr. Palmer, who is now my advisor. I told him that I wanted to apply for a Fulbright grant to study French theater. He looked at me with empathy and explained all the reasons that this was a highly unlikely scenario. Indeed, it's true that we had not yet seen a single Fulbright winner on this campus, so history was not on my side. And Dr. Palmer explained that these grants were awarded geographically by state, and California had more than its share of accomplished applicants. Second, fewer awards went to girls. Now, thankfully, that has changed. And third, and I'll never forget the look in Dr. Palmer's eyes as he told me, "Ruth, everyone wants to go to France. Can't you pick a less desirable country?" Well, of course I couldn't. How could I study French theater in another country? It was obvious. I left his office, dejected, as you might have guessed, wondering what to do. The application was daunting. The next morning, I knew if I didn't apply, I would certainly not get a grant. I had to try. For me, trying, tenacity, was becoming a key component of any success. My Fulbright year in France was glorious. I was in Paris and Strasbourg studying with the playwright Ionesco, a master of the theater of the absurd. And I sat in his office discussing his work in French. And I want to take a moment, it's already been said, but I have to say it too, to congratulate the 8 Fulbright winners in the class of 2013. It makes me so proud, and obviously it makes you proud. I am a firm believer in the value of a liberal arts education as a basis for whatever path you choose. Certainly, that was one of the reasons I plunged ahead a few years later and applied to the Harvard Business School. I knew I didn't have all the requirements, but I had faced that situation before. I was accepted. But my first day there, the dean of admissions called me in. He told me that I was part of an experimental group. Not what I wanted to hear, right? For the first time, the dean said, we're admitting 3% of the class with a purely liberal arts education. We're calling you the poets. You don't actually have you don't actually meet the entrance criteria. You'll love this. But we think you have promise. That was deflating, to say the least. He encouraged me, though, to ask for help. There were tutors available. Only 10% of my business school class was women, and that made it pretty tough, along with being a poet, right? It was clear to me that to succeed, I needed to make the most of my strengths and overcome my weaknesses. My Scripps grounding was a constant resource. It was here that I gained the self-confidence to compete, where I learned the skills to analyze and synthesize data, to deal with ambiguity, and to take risks. And perhaps most importantly, it was here that I learned to ask questions and to express myself clearly. So just maybe being a poet at the Harvard Business School and everywhere could be an advantage. Today, I'm delighted to tell you that Harvard Business School accepts more than 40% of the entering class who have liberal arts educations. And finally, 40% of the entering class are women. Many of us have worked very hard to make that happen, but it is possible. I had no intention of becoming an entrepreneur when I finished business school, but circumstance intervened. I was hired as a marketing director for a large retail conglomerate in Boston. There, I had the idea for a catalog of garden tools and accessories, which hadn't been done before. The chairman was enthusiastic about my concept and gave me the green light. But after 6 months of energetic activity, the 9 male division presidents were letting the chairman know they weren't too happy that he had hired the first woman manager, and she was starting something new and different and exciting. My catalog was canceled, and I was devastated. I held it together that day at the office. I did not cry until I got home that evening and told my husband what had happened. He waited till I finished, and then he asked me a very important question. Why don't we do it? He really meant, why don't you do it? He had a full-time job. But he was smart enough to know that by changing the pronoun, it would make me feel better about the enormous challenge that lay ahead. So once again, I started out on a new, scary adventure. I named the company Gardener's Eden and started it on a veritable shoestring. But after just 3 years, William Sonoma called to ask if I would be interested in selling them my company and relocating to San Francisco, where their headquarters were. They would provide the resources, and together we would build the business quickly. So my husband and I did move to the Bay Area, and I ran Gardner's Eden for Williams-Sonoma for 5 years, building the catalog business, expanding into e-commerce, opening retail stores, and definitely being on the fast path. And then I decided it was time for a change. I took a year off, during which I conceived of the idea to start a fresh flower catalog and e-commerce business. I liked gardening, but I love flowers. Please remember, pick something you are passionate about. The floral industry had a cumbersome chain of distribution. I wanted to shortcut it, to eliminate the middlemen by shipping the flowers direct from the grower to the end consumer by Federal Express, saving time and saving money. I would call it calyx and corolla, 2 botanical parts of the flower. Many so-called experts in the field told me that I was doomed to failure. But by then I knew that if I didn't try, I would always wonder if the concept was viable. And if it failed, if I failed, it was okay. At least I would have tried. Calyx and corolla was hugely challenging. We overcame obstacles that I never even imagined existed. But we learned to ship these fragile, perishable, and beautiful blossoms through a partnership with the best growers and FedEx. And today, most of the flowers in the US are shipped and sold in the way that we pioneered. My small management team was tight-knit, smart, and very enthusiastic, and they were women. We worked very hard, but we had a great time doing it. And I sold Calyx and Corolla to a financial group 10 years afterwards. I currently serve on corporate boards and have for a number of years. When I began, I was always the only woman in the boardroom. Now I am one of 2 or 3. We still have a long way to go to achieve parity in the boardroom and in the business world as a whole. My generation is counting on you, the Scripps class of 2013, to continue breaking down barriers across all of the professions. Our founder, Ellen Browning Scripps, was passionate about education for women. In the mid-1800s, she put herself through a few years of college and earned a certificate. Women were not entitled to 4 years of college, and certainly not a college diploma. Miss Scripps never forgot this. Her 2 brothers were in the newspaper business, but she was the power and the brains of those businesses. The E.W. Scripps newspaper chain was an enormous success and eventually made Miss Scripps a very wealthy woman. She believed wholeheartedly that her fortune should be used for the public good. What a role model. In 1926, Ellen Browning Scripps founded our college. She wanted women to have the same opportunity to learn as men. And when people ask you why you chose a women's college, you might tell them that we didn't choose just any women's college. We chose this one. Our founder's English roots inspired her to embrace the Oxford-like campus with multiple colleges sharing facilities and students sharing ideas. So the women she cared so much about would have the benefit of a co-ed environment but thrive in small classes and immersion in the humanities that would be uniquely ours. Ms. Scripps was smart enough to purchase much of the land on which all the Claremont colleges now stand. She did not need a Harvard MBA. Her extraordinary philanthropy also created the Scripps Institute of Oceanography, the Scripps Clinic and Hospital, the Scripps Aquarium, the Bishop School, Torrey Pines State Park, and so many public institutions of culture in her hometown of La Jolla. In 1926, Ellen Browning Scripps was featured on the cover of Time magazine. Not bad. I think Ms. Scripps would be very pleased that the future of our beloved college is in the hands of our visionary president, Lori Bettison Varga. And I think Ms. Scripps would be thrilled at your accomplishments, you, the Scripps class of 2013. When we arrive on this campus, we learn the school motto, Incipit Vita Nova. Here begins your new life. Those words were appropriate for you 4 years ago, and they are appropriate today. Commencement is a beginning. At Scripps, you have laid the foundation for the next chapter of your life, whether it is in the boardroom or the operating room, the courtroom or the classroom, and always the family room, however we fashion it. You will know that you are so well prepared to achieve your dreams. And one more thing. Please take a moment and look around you. Look to your left and look to your right, at your friends and your classmates. Right here is one of the greatest gifts of these 4 years. There's a friend out there. I want to tell you that I am amazed and so happy that I am still close to 12 wonderful Scripps classmates, and there were only 68 in our class. And some of these special friends, I can't even say it, I get so emotional, are here today. Thank you so much for being here. And so to you, the Scripps class of 2013, thank you for letting me share this very special day with you. Incipit Vita Nova, here begins your new life. Congratulations.